The howl pierced the darkness like a blade, cutting through the quiet Nevada night. I froze, my blood turning to ice in my veins. That sound, it wasn't a coyote or a wolf. It was something else entirely. Something wrong. My truck's headlights illuminated only a small portion of the desert highway stretching before me. Miles from civilization, the darkness felt oppressive, a living thing pressing against the thin shell of light surrounding my vehicle. The radio had lost signal 20 minutes ago, leaving nothing but static and the rumble of tires on asphalt to keep me company. I'm Harrison Wheeler, 46 years old, and I never believed in monsters until tonight. Another howl erupted, closer this time. My knuckles whitened as I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Something darted across the road ahead, a massive shadow moving with impossible speed. I slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding sideways before coming to a halt. My heart hammered against my ribs as I peered through the windshield. Nothing. Just empty desert bathed in silver moonlight. The full moon hung bloated and ominous above, casting everything in an ethereal glow that made the landscape look alien and hostile. I reached for my cell phone. No service. Of course, the decision to take this shortcut through the Nevada desert was proving to be the worst mistake of my life. I should have stayed on the main highway, should have ignored the GPS when it suggested this route would save me an hour on my drive to my sister's place in Elko. A thump on the roof of my truck shattered my thoughts. Something was on top of my vehicle. My breath caught in my throat as long, curved claws punctured the metal roof, digging in with a screech that set my teeth on edge. The roof began to bend inward under immense pressure. I stomped on the gas pedal, the truck lurching forward. The creature, whatever it was, maintained its grip. I swerved violently, hoping to dislodge it, but the claws only dug deeper into the metal. Then came a sound that will haunt me until my dying day. A low, rumbling growl directly above my head. Not animal, not human. Something in between. The windshield exploded inward as a massive, clawed hand punched through the glass. I screamed, veering off the road and into the desert. The truck bounced violently over the rough terrain, my head slamming against the side window hard enough to see stars. I lost control, the truck rolling onto its side and sliding several yards before coming to rest against a large boulder. The impact threw me against my seatbelt, the air forced from my lungs. Disoriented and in pain, I hung suspended by my seatbelt, blood trickling into my eyes from a gash on my forehead. The desert night was silent again, save for the ticking of the truck's cooling engine and my labored breathing. Something moved outside the truck. Heavy footsteps crunching on gravel circled the vehicle. I fumbled with my seatbelt, desperate to free myself before whatever was out there reached me. The driver's side door, now facing upward, was wrenched away with a screech of tearing metal. I looked up into the face of nightmare. It stood on two legs like a man but was far from human. Towering over me, its body was covered in thick, dark fur. The head was that of a wolf, but distorted, wrong. The snout elongated and filled with teeth too large and numerous to fit properly in its mouth. But the eyes, God, the eyes were the worst part. Yellow and glowing in the moonlight, they held a terrible intelligence. This wasn't just an animal. There was something calculating, something evil looking back at me. The werewolf, for what else could I call it, reached down with arms too long for its body, claws extended. I finally managed to release my seatbelt, falling awkwardly to what was now the floor of the truck. The glove compartment had sprung open in the crash, and my hand closed around the only weapon I had, a small pocket knife. It was pathetically inadequate, but survival instinct took over. I slashed at the creature's reaching arm, drawing a line of dark blood across its forearm. It roared in pain and anger, the sound so loud in the confines of the truck cab that I felt my eardrums might rupture. In that moment of distraction, I scrambled through the broken windshield, glass cutting into my palms and knees. I didn't look back as I ran blindly into the desert night. My lungs burned and my legs screamed in protest, but pure terror kept me moving. Behind me, I heard the creature give chase, its heavy footfalls too quick, too close. I risked a glance over my shoulder and immediately regretted it. The werewolf was loping after me on all fours, eating up the distance between us with terrifying speed. Ahead, I spotted a cluster of large boulders. If I could reach them, maybe I could find a hiding spot, some narrow crevice the creature couldn't follow. My foot caught on a desert shrub, sending me sprawling face first into the dirt. Pain lanced through my ankle. Sprained or broken, I couldn't tell. It didn't matter. I was dead anyway. I rolled onto my back, knife clutched in my trembling hand, as the werewolf slowed to a predatory walk. It circled me, yellow eyes gleaming with an almost gleeful malice. "Please," I whispered, though I knew reasoning with this thing was futile. The creature tilted its head, almost curiously. Then it opened its jaws and spoke. "Run, Harrison." My blood froze. It knew my name. The voice was guttural, distorted, but unmistakably forming words. How was that possible? How did it know who I was? I didn't have time to contemplate these questions because at that moment, headlights cut through the darkness. A vehicle was approaching on the distant highway. The werewolf's head snapped toward the light and it growled in frustration. Without another word, it bounded away into the darkness, disappearing as quickly and mysteriously as it had appeared. I lay there gasping and shaking until the vehicle, a large semi-truck, passed by without stopping. They hadn't seen me, of course. I was too far from the road, a tiny speck in the vast desert darkness. Using a nearby rock for support, I hauled myself to my feet, wincing at the pain shooting through my ankle. My truck was disabled, my phone useless, and somewhere out there, a monster that knew my name was hunting me. My only hope was to reach the highway and flag down help. Limping badly and using my pocket knife as a makeshift walking stick, by jamming it into the dirt for support, I began the arduous journey toward the distant ribbon of asphalt. Every shadow, every rustle of wind through the desert scrub made me flinch. The werewolf was toying with me. I felt it in my bones. It could have killed me easily, but had chosen to let me go. "Run, Harrison!" A game of cat and mouse, only I was limping through a terrain completely unfamiliar to me, while it moved through the darkness like it owned the night. After what felt like hours, I reached the highway, empty in both directions. I collapsed onto the shoulder of the road, despair washing over me. Even if I followed the highway, the nearest town was at least 20 miles away. I'd never make it on foot, especially injured. Headlights appeared in the distance. Relief flooded through me as I staggered to my feet, waving my arms frantically. The vehicle, a pickup truck, slowed as it approached. "Oh, thank God," I breathed as the driver rolled down his window. An older man with a weathered face peered out at me. "You okay, buddy? You're bleeding something fierce." "My truck crashed," I gasped. "Please, you have to help me. There's something out there." The man's expression shifted from concern to wariness. "Something? Like what?" How could I explain? "Please," I said instead. "I need to get to the nearest town." After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "Hop in. Dyer's about 15 miles up the road." I climbed into the passenger seat, wincing at the pain in my ankle. "Thank you. I can't tell you how grateful I am." "Name's Bill," he said, putting the truck in gear. "Harrison," I replied, then froze. The werewolf had known my name. How? "You look like you've seen a ghost, Harrison," Bill remarked, glancing sideways at me. "Something like that," I muttered. We drove in silence for several minutes, the headlights cutting a swath through the darkness. I kept my eyes on the side mirror, half expecting to see yellow eyes reflecting back at me. "So what happened to your truck?" Bill finally asked. I hesitated. "Hit something on the road. Went off into the desert." "What did you hit?" I'm not sure." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Bill grunted, clearly not believing me. "A lot of strange things happen out here in the desert, especially around Dyer." My skin prickled. "What do you mean?" Bill shrugged. "Town's got history, bad history, livestock mutilations, people gone missing. Been happening for years." "Missing people?" My mouth went dry. "Yep, just last month, family of 4 vanished. Car found abandoned on this very highway. No signs of struggle, no bodies. Just gone." I swallowed hard. "And no one knows what happened to them?" Bill's eyes remained fixed on the road. "Sheriff says it was probably drug runners, or maybe the family just wanted to disappear." Start fresh somewhere else. But you don't believe that. Bill shot me a look that sent chills down my spine. Didn't say that. We lapsed into uncomfortable silence. Outside, the desert seemed to press against the windows, an ocean of darkness waiting to swallow us whole. A howl cut through the night, so close it might have been right outside the truck. Bill's hands jerked on the steering wheel, sending us momentarily into the opposite lane before he corrected. Jesus Christ, he muttered. What the hell was that? My heart hammered against my ribs. We need to go faster. Bill stepped on the gas, the speedometer climbing past 70, then 80 miles per hour. You know something about this, don't you? He accused, his voice tense. Before I could answer, something massive darted across the road ahead. A blur of movement that disappeared into the darkness beyond the headlights. Did you see that? Bill shouted, the truck swerving as he tried to avoid hitting whatever had crossed our path. Keep driving, I urged, my eyes frantically scanning the darkness outside. A heavy thud on the roof made us both jump. Claws punctured the metal, just as they had with my truck. Bill cursed, the truck weaving across the road as he tried to maintain control. What the fuck is that? He screamed. The windshield exploded inward, showering us with glass. A massive, clawed hand reached for Bill, grabbing him by the throat and yanking him halfway out of the shattered window. I lunged for the steering wheel as the truck careened wildly. Bill's screams turned to a wet gurgle, then silence. With a final, violent jerk, he was torn completely from the cab, leaving me alone in the driver's seat of the speeding vehicle. I fought to control the truck, stepping over the center console to get my foot on the gas pedal. Through the rear-view mirror, I caught a glimpse of a dark shape hunched over something on the highway, Bill's body being torn apart by the creature. Bile rose in my throat, but I forced it down. The truck was still moving, and as long as it was between me and that thing, I had a chance. Lights appeared ahead, the town of Dyer. Never had civilization looked so beautiful. I pressed the gas pedal to the floor, desperate to reach safety. As I neared the town limits, marked by a weathered sign welcoming visitors to Dyer, population 283, I checked the rearview mirror again. The highway behind me was empty, no sign of the werewolf or Bill's remains. The main street was deserted, the buildings dark save for a gas station and a diner still illuminated despite the late hour. I pulled into the gas station parking lot, hands shaking so badly I could barely put the truck in park. Inside, a bored-looking young man glanced up from his phone as I stumbled through the door. Holy shit, man, are you okay? He jumped to his feet, eyes widening at the sight of me. Bloodied, covered in glass, wild-eyed with terror. Please, I gasped. You need to call the police. There's been an attack on the highway. A man is dead. What? Who's dead? The attendant reached for the phone. His name was Bill. He picked me up after my truck crashed. Something attacked us. Something? The attendant paused, phone halfway to his ear. What kind of something? How could I explain what I'd seen without sounding insane? Just call the police, please. He dialed and I collapsed into a chair by the window, my eyes fixed on the darkness outside. Was it still out there? Watching? Waiting? The sheriff arrived 15 minutes later, a tall woman with steel gray hair and a weathered face that suggested she'd seen her share of troubles. She introduced herself as Sheriff Donna Hayes and asked me to repeat my story. I told her about the crash, about Bill picking me up, about something attacking the truck and dragging him away. I left out the parts that would make me sound crazy. The werewolf, the way it had known my name, the fact that it had spoken to me. Sheriff Hayes listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she asked, "And you didn't see what attacked you?" "It happened too fast," I lied. "It was dark." "And you don't know Bill's last name? Or where he was from?" I shook my head. The sheriff sighed, rubbing the bridge of her nose. "I'll send a deputy to check out the site, but without more information." "Someone is dead," I protested, "torn to pieces on the highway." "Sir, you've been through a traumatic experience. You're injured and in shock. Let me call Doc Mercer to take a look at you, and we'll sort this out in the morning." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "We can't wait until morning. That thing could kill someone else." "What thing, Mr. Wheeler?" The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "You said you didn't see what attacked you," I faltered. I I meant whatever it was. A mountain lion, maybe, or a bear. Sheriff Hayes studied me for a long moment. There haven't been bears in this part of Nevada for decades, and mountain lions don't usually attack vehicles on highways. She turned to the gas station attendant. Jeremy, call Doc Mercer. Tell him we've got an injured man who needs looking at. I'm fine, I insisted, though my ankle throbbed and the cuts on my hands and face stung. What we need to do is organize a search party. Find Bill's body. That will prove I'm telling the truth. The sheriff's radio crackled to life. She stepped away to answer it, speaking in low tones I couldn't make out. When she returned, her expression had hardened. My deputy just drove the stretch of highway where you claim this attack occurred. No sign of any body or blood? No debris from a crash or attack? That's impossible, I whispered. I saw it tear him apart. Sheriff Hayes leaned in close. Listen to me carefully, Mr. Wheeler. This isn't the first time we've had reports of unusual events on that highway, but spreading panic doesn't help anyone. Now you're going to let Doc Mercer check you out, and in the morning, we'll take your formal statement. Understood? Before I could respond, the bell above the gas station door jingled. A man in his 60s with thick glasses and a medical bag entered, presumably Doc Mercer. Evening, Donna, he greeted the sheriff. This our patient? Sheriff Hayes nodded. Possible concussion, lacerations, maybe a sprained ankle. Claims he was in a car crash, then witnessed an attack on another motorist. The doctor gave me a kindly smile that didn't reach his eyes. Let's have a look at you, son. As he examined my injuries, cleaning and bandaging the cuts, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong in this town. The sheriff's dismissal of my story, the missing evidence, the unusual events she'd mentioned. It all pointed to a darker truth lurking beneath the surface. You're lucky, Doc Mercer declared, finishing with a bandage around my ankle. Mild sprain, no concussion that I can detect, though you should take it easy for a day or two. Cuts are superficial. Thank you, I said mechanically. I've got a room above the clinic, the doctor continued. You can stay there tonight. In the morning, we'll figure out what to do about your situation. I wanted to refuse, to demand action now, but exhaustion was setting in, the adrenaline that had kept me going finally ebbing away. Besides, where else could I go? My truck was wrecked. Bill's truck was probably still on the highway, and I had no way to leave town. All right, I conceded, but first thing tomorrow, we need to search for Bill and figure out what that thing was. Sheriff Hayes and Doc Mercer exchanged a look I couldn't decipher. Of course, the sheriff said smoothly. First thing tomorrow. Doc Mercer's clinic was a small, one-story building a block from the gas station. The room above it was sparsely furnished, but clean. A single bed, a nightstand, a chair, and a small bathroom. The doctor gave me a change of clothes that were too large but better than my blood-stained ones, and a bottle of painkillers for my ankle. Try to get some rest, he advised, heading for the door. Sheriff Hayes will be by in the morning to take your statement. Doctor, I said, stopping him, have there been other attacks like this? Other disappearances? Doc Mercer hesitated, his hand on the doorknob. This is a small town, Mr. Wheeler. We look after our own. Best you remember that. With that cryptic warning, he left, the lock clicking ominously behind him. I limped to the window and looked out at the deserted main street. Dyer was unnaturally quiet for a town with a population of nearly 300. Where was everyone? Even accounting for the late hour, shouldn't there be some signs of life? A movement across the street caught my eye. A figure standing in the shadows watching the clinic. Even from this distance, I could make out the gleam of yellow eyes reflecting the streetlight. I scrambled away from the window, heart pounding. It had followed me into town. It knew where I was. I tried the door, locked from the outside. The window was too small to climb through, and I was on the second floor anyway. I was trapped. My phone was still in my pocket, somehow intact despite everything. Still no service, but I could use the flashlight. I swept the beam around the room, looking for anything I could use as a weapon. Nothing but a cheap lamp and a ceramic mug on the nightstand. A low growl from outside the door froze me in place. It was inside the building. I backed away, gripping the lamp with sweating hands. The doorknob turned slowly, the lock mechanism clicking as it was forced open. The door swung inward, revealing not the werewolf, but Sheriff Hayes. She held a shotgun in her hands, pointed directly at my chest. "Put down the lamp, Mr. Wheeler," she said calmly. "Sheriff, thank God," I gasped, lowering the lamp. "It's here. The thing that killed Bill. I saw it outside, and I heard it in the hallway." "I know," she replied, her expression unreadable. "It's been hunting in these parts for a long time." A chill ran down my spine. "You know about it?" She stepped into the room, keeping the shotgun trained on me. "Did you really think you were the first outsider to see it? To try to warn us?" My mouth went dry. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that some secrets are kept for a reason, Mr. Wheeler. The creature you saw, we've lived alongside it for generations. An arrangement of sorts." "Arrangement?" I echoed, disbelieving. "It killed a man tonight, probably killed that family last month, and God knows how many others." Sheriff Hayes nodded. "Yes, it needs to feed, but in return, it protects our town, keeps other dangers away, brings prosperity." "You're insane," I whispered. "You're feeding it people?" "Not our people," she corrected. "Never our own, just travelers. People who won't be missed, or those who've seen too much, like you." The floor creaked behind her. A massive shape filled the doorway, the werewolf standing upright, yellow eyes gleaming with hunger. "Jesus Christ," I breathed, backing against the wall. "I am sorry," Sheriff Hayes said, and she actually sounded sincere. "But the arrangement must be maintained, for the good of Dyer. Please," I begged, "you don't have to do this. We can fight it. Kill it." The sheriff laughed, a hollow sound. "Kill it? People have tried. It can't be killed, not by any weapon we possess. And even if it could, do you have any idea what it would do to this town? The prosperity, the protection, it would all end." "What protection? What are you talking about?" "Things worse than our guardian," she said cryptically. "Things that would devour us all, not just the occasional traveler." The werewolf growled, growing impatient. Sheriff Hayes lowered her shotgun. "Make it quick," she told the creature. "No screams. Don't want to wake the town." She stepped aside, allowing the monster into the room. In that moment, survival instinct took over. I hurled the lamp at the sheriff, catching her off guard. It shattered against her shoulder, sending her staggering backward into the werewolf. I used the distraction to lunge for the shotgun, wrenching it from her grasp. The werewolf roared, shoving the sheriff aside. I fired without aiming, the blast deafening in the confined space. The creature jerked backward, black blood spraying from a wound in its shoulder, but it didn't go down. Sheriff Hayes scrambled for her sidearm. I pivoted and fired again, catching her in the chest. She crumpled to the floor, eyes wide with shock. The werewolf howled in rage, lunging for me. I fired a third time, the blast catching it full in the face. It reeled backward, crashing into the hallway wall. Still, impossibly, it remained standing, its face a mangled mess of fur, flesh, and bone that was already beginning to reform. I bolted past it, limping down the stairs as fast as my injured ankle would allow. Behind me, the werewolf's enraged howls echoed through the clinic. Outside, the main street remained deserted, but lights were coming on in buildings as the shotgun blasts roused the town. I had minutes, maybe seconds, before the townspeople, accomplices in this nightmare, responded. I hobbled toward Bill's truck, still parked at the gas station. The keys had to be inside. There hadn't been time to remove them. If I could reach it before the werewolf recovered or the townspeople mobilized, I might have a chance. A howl behind me sent fresh terror coursing through my veins. The werewolf had recovered and was in pursuit. I could hear its heavy footfalls pounding the pavement, gaining on me with every second. The gas station was just ahead. I risked a glance over my shoulder and immediately wished I hadn't. The werewolf was charging down the middle of the street, its face partially healed but still a grotesque mask of rage. Behind it, figures were emerging from buildings, the citizens of Dyer, alerted to the disruption of their unholy pact. I reached the truck, yanking open the door and scrambling inside. The keys were indeed in the ignition. I turned them with trembling hands, praying the engine would start. It roared to life just as the werewolf reached the gas station parking lot. I threw the truck into reverse, backing out so quickly I clipped a gas pump. Then forward, tires squealing as I accelerated toward the highway. The werewolf leaped, landing on the hood of the truck with an impact that nearly sent us off the road. Massive claws dug into the metal as it pulled itself toward the windshield. Yellow eyes locked on mine with murderous intent. I swerved violently, trying to dislodge it, but it held fast. With one hand on the wheel, I raised the shotgun with the other and fired through the windshield. The blast caught the creature in the chest, the force of it finally throwing it from the hood. I didn't slow down, didn't look back. The town of Dyer receded in my rearview mirror as I pushed the truck to its limits, desperate to put as much distance as possible between myself and that nightmare place. Dawn was breaking by the time I reached the next town, a larger, more normal-looking place called Hawthorne. I pulled into the parking lot of the sheriff's department, my hands still shaking, the shotgun on the seat beside me. How could I explain what had happened? Who would believe me? A town protecting a werewolf, feeding it travelers, maintaining some sort of twisted symbiotic relationship? It sounded insane, but I had to try. The thing had to be stopped, and the people of Dyer held accountable for their part in the horror. I limped into the sheriff's department, the shotgun left hidden under the seat of the truck. The deputy at the front desk looked up, his eyes widening at my appearance. "Sir, are you all right?" "No," I answered truthfully. "I need to report a murder. Several murders. In Dyer." The deputy's expression changed subtly. "Dyer, you said?" I nodded, a knot forming in my stomach at his reaction. "Yes, there's something evil there, something killing people, and the townspeople are helping it." The deputy picked up his phone. "Sir, why don't you have a seat? I'll get the sheriff." I sat in one of the hard plastic chairs, every muscle in my body aching with exhaustion and strain. Through the window, I could see the sun rising over the desert. Sunrise had never looked so beautiful, so welcome. The sheriff who emerged from the back office was a heavy-set man in his 50s with a bushy mustache and weary eyes. He introduced himself as Sheriff Mike Tanner and led me to a private interview room. "So," he began once we were seated, "you want to report some murders in Dyer?" "Yes," I said, trying to organize my thoughts. "I was driving through last night when my truck went off the road. I was attacked by something, a creature, like a werewolf." Sheriff Tanner's expression remained neutral. "A werewolf?" "I know how it sounds," I said quickly, "but it's real. It killed a man named Bill who picked me up after my crash, tore him apart on the highway, and when I got to Dyer, I discovered the town is protecting it, feeding it travelers. Their Sheriff Hayes tried to feed me to it, but I managed to escape." "Sheriff Donna Hayes?" Tanner asked, his brow furrowing. "Yes, that's her. I shot her." The admission came out in a rush. She was going to let that thing kill me. It was self-defense. Sheriff Tanner leaned back in his chair, studying me intently. "Mr. Wheeler, Harrison Wheeler. Mr. Wheeler, I'm going to be straight with you. Your story is difficult to believe, but I know Donna Hayes. We've worked together for years, so I'm going to make a call to Dyer right now, and we're going to sort this out." Panic flared in my chest. "No, don't you understand? The whole town is in on it. They'll deny everything, say I'm crazy. They'll come for me." "Just calm down," Tanner said, his hand moving to rest on his sidearm. "No one's coming for you. Let me make this call, and we'll get to the bottom of this." What choice did I have? I sat there, heart pounding, as Sheriff Tanner picked up the phone and dialed. After a moment, his expression changed to one of concern. "No answer," he muttered, trying another number, then another. "That's odd. Can't reach anyone in Dyer?" A cold feeling spread through my stomach. "Because they're all looking for me," I said. "They can't let me expose their secret." Sheriff Tanner hung up the phone. "I'm going to send some deputies out there to check things out. In the meantime, you look like you could use some food and rest. We've got a cot in the back, and I can have someone bring you something from the diner across the street." Food and sleep sounded heavenly, but I couldn't lower my guard. "I'm not making this up. That thing is real and it's dangerous. And now it knows someone escaped. It might come here next." "Let me worry about that," Tanner said, standing. "You get some rest. When my deputies report back, we'll talk again." I was led to a small room with a cot and a sink. "Not a cell," Tanner assured me. just a place for deputies to crash during long shifts. The door didn't lock from the outside, and I was free to leave anytime. But where would I go? I had no money, no phone service, no transportation except the stolen truck of a dead man. I lay down on the cot, every muscle screaming in protest. Despite my fear and suspicion, exhaustion won out, and I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. I was awakened by raised voices. Disoriented, I checked my watch. I'd been asleep for nearly 6 hours. It was early afternoon. The voices were coming from the main office area. I crept to the door and listened. No sign of any disturbance, a male voice was saying. Talk to Sheriff Hayes herself. She's fine. Says she's never heard of a Harrison Wheeler. And the gas station attendant, that was Sheriff Tanner's voice. Jeremy Wilkins? Same story. No recollection of any stranger coming into town last night. No reports of any accidents or deaths on the highway. And Doc Mercer says he was home all night. No patients, no visitors. Sheriff, this guy is either confused or making the whole thing up. My blood ran cold. They were covering it up just as I'd feared. But how was Sheriff Hayes alive? I'd shot her point blank in the chest with a shotgun. The werewolf. It hadn't just been feeding on travelers. It had been turning some of them, creating more of its kind. Sheriff Hayes must be one of them. And if she was, then who else in Dyer might be a werewolf? How far did this infection, this curse, spread? I retreated from the door, mind racing. I had to get out of here, had to find help somewhere else. The FBI maybe, or the state police. Someone who wouldn't immediately call Dyer to verify my story. The window in the room was small but big enough to squeeze through. It opened onto an alley behind the sheriff's department. I forced it open as quietly as possible and climbed out, wincing as my injured ankle took my weight. The alley was empty, bathed in afternoon sunlight. I limped toward the street, trying to look casual despite my disheveled appearance. My plan was to find Bill's truck and get as far away from Nevada as possible. I rounded the corner and froze. Parked directly in front of the sheriff's department was a Dyer County Sheriff's vehicle, and leaning against it, talking to a deputy from Hawthorne, was Sheriff Donna Hayes. She looked completely unharmed, no sign of the shotgun blast I delivered to her chest. She was smiling, gesturing animatedly as she spoke. I ducked back into the alley, heart hammering. She'd come for me, to silence me, to take me back to Dyer, to feed me to the werewolf, or worse, to make me one of them. I needed a weapon. The shotgun was still in Bill's truck, but I couldn't reach it without being seen. I scanned the alley desperately, finding nothing but trash cans and debris. Then I remembered, my pocket knife. I'd used it to stab the werewolf during our first encounter. It hadn't done much damage, but it was better than nothing. I fished it from my pocket, the blade still crusted with dried black blood from my earlier attack. Moving deeper into the alley, I tried to formulate a plan. I couldn't outrun them, couldn't fight them, and couldn't convince anyone of the truth. My only hope was to somehow escape this town and find help elsewhere. A door halfway down the alley caught my eye. The back entrance to what looked like a diner. If I could slip inside, maybe I could find another way out, or at least hide until Sheriff Hayes left. I limped to the door and tried the handle. Locked. I cursed under my breath, glancing back toward the street. Voices were growing louder. Sheriff Hayes and the Hawthorne deputy were moving in my direction. Desperate, I used my pocket knife to force the lock, the old mechanism giving way with surprising ease. I slipped inside just as footsteps rounded the corner into the alley. The kitchen was empty, the lunch rush apparently over. I moved quietly through it, passing stoves still warm from the day's cooking and sinks filled with soaking pots. Beyond was the main dining area, where a few patrons lingered over coffee and pie. I kept my head down, trying to look like I belonged as I made my way toward the front exit. If I could just get out without drawing attention, maybe I could circle back to Bill's truck and... There he is! The shout came from behind me. Sheriff Hayes stood in the doorway to the kitchen, pointing directly at me. Her eyes, I noticed with horror, had taken on a yellowish tinge. The few customers in the diner looked up in confusion as I bolted for the door. Outside, I found myself on Hawthorne's main street, pedestrians turning to stare at the wild-eyed, disheveled man in their midst. "Stop that man!" Sheriff Hayes called out, emerging from the diner. "He's wanted for murder!" I ran as fast as my injured ankle would allow, dodging pedestrians and crossing the street against traffic. Horns blared as cars swerved to avoid hitting me. Behind me, I could hear the commotion of pursuit. Sheriff Hayes and what sounded like multiple deputies. Ahead, I spotted Bill's truck, still parked where I'd left it in front of the Hawthorne Sheriff's Department. If I could reach it, get the shotgun. A police cruiser screeched to a halt directly in front of me, cutting off my path. Sheriff Tanner climbed out, hand on his holstered weapon. "That's far enough, Wheeler," he called. "We need to talk about these accusations you're making." I backed away, trapped between Tanner in front of me and Hayes approaching from behind. "She's one of them," I shouted, pointing at Hayes. "Look at her eyes, she's turning." Several onlookers had gathered, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Sheriff Tanner glanced at Hayes, then back at me. "Son, you need help," he said calmly. "Medical help. Just come with us, and we'll get you what you need." "I shot her in the chest last night," I insisted, my voice rising with hysteria. "A shotgun blast at point-blank range. How is she alive? How is she not even injured?" Murmurs ran through the crowd. Sheriff Hayes approached slowly, her expression one of professional concern. "Mr. Wheeler," she said, "you're confused. We've never met before today. I received a call from Sheriff Tanner about your allegations, and I came to clear things up." "Liar!" I screamed. I pulled out my pocket knife, brandishing it before me. The crowd gasped, some backing away. "Stay back! All of you, stay back!" "Put down the knife, Harrison," Sheriff Tanner ordered, drawing his weapon. "Don't make this worse for yourself." I glanced around desperately, looking for any avenue of escape. That's when I noticed something. A man standing at the edge of the crowd, watching intently. There was something familiar about him. It was Bill. The man I'd watched being torn apart on the highway last night was standing there, alive and whole, watching me with an unreadable expression. "That's him," I cried, pointing with my knife. "That's Bill, the man who was killed last night." All eyes turned to the weathered man at the edge of the crowd. He stiffened, then turned to leave. "Stop him," I yelled. "He died last night. He's one of them, too." To my surprise, Sheriff Hayes called out, "Bill Forrester." "Hold up there." The man froze, then slowly turned back. Hayes approached him cautiously. "You know this man?" she asked, gesturing toward me. Bill hesitated, then shook his head. "Never seen him before in my life." "He's lying," I insisted. "He picked me up on the highway after my truck crashed. Then that thing attacked us and killed him." Sheriff Tanner kept his gun trained on me while moving closer. "Mr. Wheeler, Bill Forrester here is very much alive, as you can see. He's a longtime resident of Dyer. Now please, put down the knife." I stared at Bill, my mind reeling. This couldn't be happening. I had seen him die, had his blood splattered across my face and clothes. Unless... "What time is it?" I demanded suddenly. Tanner blinked, thrown by the question. "What? The time? What time is it right now?" "About 3:30, someone in the crowd offered. "And the date?" "What's today's date?" Sheriff Hayes and Tanner exchanged glances. "October 17th, Hayes said. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's not possible. Yesterday was November 5th. I was driving to my sister's place in Elko for her birthday. November 6th. A heavy silence fell over the crowd. Sheriff Tanner lowered his gun slightly. "Son," he said gently, "today is October 17th, has been all day." My legs gave out, and I sank to my knees in the middle of the street, the knife falling from my nerveless fingers. I don't understand." Sheriff Hayes approached, crouching down to my level. Her eyes, I noticed, were normal now. No yellow tinge. Had I imagined it? "Mr. Wheeler," she said quietly, "I think you might have experienced some kind of episode, maybe a vivid nightmare or a hallucination. It happens sometimes in the desert. Dehydration, heat stroke, even certain plants and fungi can cause intense hallucinations." "But it was real," I whispered. "The werewolf, the attack, you trying to feed me to it? It was all real." Hayes shook her head. "No werewolves in Dyer, Mr. Wheeler. Just ordinary folk trying to live quiet lives." "Then how do you explain this?" I pulled up my pant leg, revealing the bandage Doc Mercer had applied to my sprained ankle. "And these?" I showed the cuts on my hands, the gash on my forehead. Who treated these injuries? Sheriff Hayes examined the bandages, then glanced at Tanner. These look self-administered, she said. The wrapping is amateur, not professional. And the truck? I demanded. Bill's truck that I drove here? How do you explain that? My truck is parked outside the hardware store where I left it this morning, Bill spoke up. Has been all day. I felt like I was losing my mind. Everything I had experienced, everything I knew had happened, was being denied, explained away. But it had been so real, so vivid. Sheriff Tanner helped me to my feet. Come on, son, let's get you to the hospital. Get you checked out properly. Too dazed to resist, I allowed myself to be led to a patrol car. As they placed me in the back seat, I caught sight of Sheriff Hayes and Bill having an intense conversation, their heads close together. Though I couldn't hear their words, something about their body language sent a chill down my spine. At the hospital, doctors examined me thoroughly. They found the injuries I described, the sprained ankle, the cuts, the contusions, but attributed them to a likely car accident I'd had, and then wandered away from in a confused state. They found no evidence of drugs or alcohol in my system, but suggested I might have experienced a psychotic episode triggered by trauma and stress. I was kept overnight for observation. Through my window, I could see the full moon rising over the desert, just as it had the night before, or what I thought was the night before. Had it all really been a hallucination? Some nightmare so vivid I couldn't distinguish it from reality? As I lay there doubting my own sanity, a nurse entered with my evening medication. She was young, pretty, with kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled. "How are you feeling, Mr. Wheeler?" she asked, checking my chart. "Confused," I admitted. "Everything I remember, they're saying it didn't happen, that I imagined it all." The nurse nodded sympathetically. The mind can play strange tricks sometimes, especially after trauma. She handed me a small paper cup containing 2 pills. "These will help you sleep." I stared at the pills, then back at her. Something about her seemed familiar, though I was certain we'd never met. "What's your name?" I asked. "Nurse Olivia," she replied. "Now take your medicine and try to get some rest." As she turned to leave, moonlight from the window caught her eyes at just the right angle. For a brief moment, so brief I might have imagined it, they reflected the light with a yellowish glow. I dropped the pills on the floor as soon as she left, heart pounding. I wasn't crazy. Whatever was happening in Dyer, it had followed me here, and now they were trying to drug me, to make me vulnerable. Waiting until the corridor outside was quiet, I disconnected the monitoring equipment and slipped out of bed. My clothes were in a small closet, still torn and bloodstained from my ordeal. I dressed quickly, wincing at the pain in my ankle. The hospital was relatively quiet at this hour, with minimal staff at the nurse's station. I managed to make it to a side exit without being spotted. Outside, the night air was cool, the desert stretching away under moonlight. I had no plan, no destination, just an overwhelming need to get away from this place. Away from Nevada entirely, if possible. I started walking, staying off the main roads, using the moon to orient myself eastward. If I could reach Utah, maybe I'd be beyond the reach of whatever evil had taken root in these towns. For hours I walked, my injured ankle protesting with every step. The desert night was alive with small sounds. The rustle of nocturnal creatures, the whisper of wind through sagebrush. Each noise made me flinch, expecting to hear that terrible howl again. As dawn approached, I spotted lights in the distance, a highway rest stop. Summoning my last reserves of energy, I limped toward it, hoping to find help, a phone, maybe even a ride out of state. The rest stop was just opening for the day when I arrived, a sleepy attendant unlocking the doors to the small convenience store attached to the restrooms. He looked up in surprise as I approached. "Man, you look like you've been through hell," he observed, taking in my disheveled appearance. "Feel like it too," I croaked, my throat dry from the night's journey. "Any chance I could use your phone? Mine's dead." He hesitated, clearly wondering if he should be helping someone in my condition, then nodded toward a payphone attached to the side of the building. "Still works, believe it or not. One of the last in the state." I thanked him and limped to the phone, grateful to find it still had a dial tone. I called my sister in Elko, praying she would answer despite the early hour. Hello. Her voice, groggy with sleep, was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Sarah, it's me, Harrison. Harry? She sounded confused. Where are you? I thought you weren't coming until next month for my birthday. I nearly dropped the phone. Next month? Sarah, what's the date today? October 17th. Why? The same date everyone in Hawthorne had claimed. Either I had experienced some kind of psychological break or… Sarah, I need help, I said, my voice shaking. Something's happened. Something I can't explain over the phone. Can you come get me? I'm at a rest stop. I glanced around for a sign, finding one that indicated we were near the Nevada-Utah border. Sarah, bless her, didn't ask questions. She promised to leave immediately, though it would take her several hours to reach me. I spent those hours in a constant state of anxiety, jumping at every vehicle that pulled into the rest stop, expecting to see Sheriff Hayes or Bill Forrester emerge. But they never came. When Sarah finally arrived, the shock on her face as she saw my condition told me how bad I looked. "Oh my God, Harry, what happened to you?" she gasped, rushing to help me to her car. "It's a long story," I said wearily, "and you probably won't believe me." "Try me," she said, her expression concerned but determined. During the drive to Elko, I told her everything. The werewolf, Dyer's terrible secret, my escape, and the gaslighting I'd experienced in Hawthorne. To her credit, Sarah didn't interrupt, didn't dismiss my story outright. When I finally finished, she was silent for a long moment. "You think I'm crazy?" I said flatly. "No," she replied slowly. I think something happened to you. Something traumatic. Whether it was exactly what you remember or not, I can't say." "You don't believe me," Sarah sighed. "Harry, werewolves aren't real. But that doesn't mean you didn't experience something terrible. Maybe there's a rational explanation. A wild animal attack, a hit-and-run accident, a town covering up some kind of crime. Or maybe I had a psychotic break," I finished bitterly. "It happens," she said gently. "Even to stable, healthy people sometimes. Stress, trauma, sleep deprivation. They can all trigger episodes." I turned to look out the window, watching the desert landscape roll by. Had I imagined it all? Created some elaborate fantasy to explain a simple car accident? But it had been so real, so detailed. In Elko, Sarah took me straight to the hospital. Again, doctors examined me, noting the injuries that matched my story of a car accident. They ran psychological evaluations, finding no obvious signs of psychosis or delusion beyond my unusual beliefs about werewolves and conspiracies. After 2 days of tests and observation, they released me to Sarah's care with a diagnosis of acute stress disorder and possible brief psychotic disorder, along with prescriptions for anti-anxiety medication and antipsychotics. I didn't tell them I had no intention of taking the pills. For the next week, I stayed at Sarah's place, recovering physically while still turning over the events in my mind. I researched Dyer online, finding it was indeed a real town, though smaller than I remembered. Population 142, not 283. Sheriff Donna Hayes existed as well, serving as the county's law enforcement for nearly 15 years. But I found no reports of missing travelers, no mysterious deaths or disappearances. Had it all been in my mind? The werewolf, the conspiracy, all of it? Then exactly 1 week after my arrival in Elko, I found something that sent ice through my veins. A small article in an online local newspaper, Hawthorne Hospital Nurse Missing. The accompanying photo showed the same nurse who had tried to give me medication the night I escaped. Nurse Olivia Jenkins. According to the article, she had last been seen leaving work on October 17th, the night I fled the hospital. Her car was found in the parking lot, but there was no sign of Olivia herself. I showed the article to Sarah, my hands shaking. "This is her," I said. "The nurse I told you about. The one whose eyes reflected yellow in the moonlight." Sarah looked troubled. "Harry, it's too much of a coincidence," I insisted. "They're covering their tracks, eliminating anyone who might have helped me or believed me." "Or," Sarah suggested carefully, "a woman went missing, which unfortunately happens sometimes, and your mind connected it to your experience because you're looking for validation." I couldn't accept that. The timing, the specific nurse, it was all too perfect. I began researching more intensely, looking for patterns in disappearances, accidents, or unusual events around Dyer and Hawthorne over the past decades. What I found disturbed me deeply. Every full moon, for as far back as digital records went, there was at least one unexplained disappearance, unusual death, or violent animal attack reported within a 50-mile radius of Dyer. The reports were scattered across different jurisdictions, different news outlets, making the pattern easy to miss unless you were specifically looking for it. And most telling of all, every 20 years or so, there would be a spate of such incidents, followed by a sharp decline, coinciding with an economic upturn in Dyer itself, as if some kind of sacrifice had been made, leading to prosperity. When I presented my findings to Sarah, she finally began to look concerned. "Even if there is something strange happening in Dyer," she said, "what can you do about it? Go to the FBI. With what proof? You have no evidence, only correlations that could be explained in numerous ways." She was right, of course. I had nothing concrete, nothing that would convince authorities to investigate. And if I tried, who was to say the influence of whatever lurked in Dyer didn't reach far beyond its borders? For months, I lived in a state of paranoid vigilance, expecting to see yellow eyes watching me from shadows, expecting Sheriff Hayes or some other agent of Dyer to come for me. I grew a beard, dyed my hair, used only cash, and avoided security cameras. I became a ghost, living on the fringes of society. Sarah tried to help, tried to convince me to seek treatment, but eventually my paranoia drove a wedge between us. I left Elko in the middle of the night, leaving only a note thanking her for her help and apologizing for what I'd put her through. I drifted after that, taking odd jobs that paid cash, staying in cheap motels, never more than a few weeks in any one place, always watching, always waiting, until last week, nearly a year after my encounter in the Nevada desert. I was working as a dishwasher at a diner in a small Oregon town when I saw the news report. A family of 4 had vanished on a highway in Nevada, their car found abandoned near Dyer. The full moon had been the night before their disappearance. Something inside me snapped. I couldn't run anymore, couldn't hide. If no one else would stop what was happening in Dyer, then it had to be me. I spent my meager savings on supplies, silver bullets, mythology suggested they might work, holy water couldn't hurt, a high-powered hunting rifle, and enough ammunition to start a small war. I knew it might not be enough to kill the creature, but maybe, just maybe, I could expose the truth. Which brings me to now. I'm writing this account as a record, a testimony of what I've experienced and what I'm about to do. If you're reading this, it likely means I didn't survive my return to Dyer. Tonight is the full moon. I'm parked on the same stretch of highway where my ordeal began, watching the sun set over the desert. Soon darkness will fall, and with it, the hunt will begin. But this time, I'm the hunter. If I don't make it, if this record is all that remains of Harrison Wheeler, then let it serve as a warning. Beware the roads around Dyer, Nevada. Beware traveling alone at night when the moon is full, and if you hear a howl that sounds neither animal nor human, run, and don't look back. Because the Werewolf of Nevada is real, and once it has your scent, it never stops hunting.